Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Mimers Council Live this evening. And as you will know, many of you already, that I'm joined once again by Racial Consciousness. Now, Racial Consciousness, as many of you know as well, from from his social media and Mimers Council social media, has agreed to do this on a weekly basis. Things are getting a bit crazy at the moment, and we decided that things need to be addressed in a more rapid response to as developments occur to in an audible format. As you know, Racial Consciousness is very well followed and posts a hell of a lot on Twitter, but now thankfully we've got his voice weekly resounding in your ears, so hopefully we can pull something together and try and make sense of the chaos that's going on. As I say, there's so much happening now, it's getting insane. But I know Racial Consciousness wanted to explain a little bit about why he's decided to agree to my request to join us here live every week. So how are you doing, RC? And do you want to just give you a little blurb there?
Yeah, before we do that, I just want to ask everybody in the chat box how my audio is. Phil and I, we've been testing my audio for like the last hour and a half, and we've had some varying results. So like, if my audio is good, can you guys just let me know real quick in the chat, or if I need to turn it up or down, or if Phil needs to make any adjustments?
It's coming through good from me. I'm not seeing anything in the. No, everyone's saying it's good. Great.
Okay. All right. So yeah, the normally, like, I have no ambition to do these kinds of things. I actually think that there are people who could do this stuff way better than I do. Twitter is actually a pretty easy platform for me to be on because I can shoot from the hip. It doesn't really require a lot of forethought, and you get such a limited character amount anyway that you don't have to worry about explaining things in detail. You know, you can only explain things in the roughest of outlines. So Twitter's easy, it's effortless. This I find a lot more difficult personally. In fact, I feel quite uncomfortable doing it. So this is actually very difficult for me all around. But the reason why I agreed to do it is because Phil and I we talk a lot um, off of Twitter, off of these types of things. We actually talk a lot in real life, and the rate of acceleration of change that we've been seeing just in the last few months is incredibly concerning. Um, Not in a sort of panicked sort of way, but it's concerning to the degree that I do feel like it's necessary to talk about it and to show it as evidence that people need to start taking measures of preparation, because I don't think things are ever going to go back to the way they were, you know, a year
Mhm.
ago, or you know, even just a few months ago. I think things are going to forever change, and I think that the powers that be have been kind of forecasting that with this whole new normal concept. I don't think at all that that new normal was just for coronavirus. I think this is we're moving into something a little bit different right now, and so that's why I agreed to do this show. Um, so I jotted a few notes down here so I wouldn't lose track of it in my jumbled mess of a brain. But the purpose of this show isn't to be yet another source of entertainment. All right, so there's 101 podcasts out there, live streams out there that are just for entertainment, and that's great because I would rather you guys be listening to some pro-white podcast or some nationalist podcast rather than watching TV or playing video games or something like that. So they're good, but that's not the purpose here. Um, nor is this show supposed to be a vanity project of any kind. It's not meant to be a source of intellectual stimulation either. I mean, this is going to be a very simplistic show, and it's going to be geared towards more of inspiring you or motivating you rather to start making some necessary changes in life to be prepared for the changes that are taking place in society and in politics and in government, because these things are incredibly concerning and they're happening at a very rapid pace, and at some point you will no longer have the ability to prepare. you're just going to have to deal with everything as it is. And so we would rather you be prepared beforehand so that you can move through it in the best possible manner.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it takes up a lot of time to do these types of things. And just to clarify, we're going to be going for about 45 minutes. Sorry, because I should have mentioned this earlier. 45 minutes to about an hour. And that would keep it on track, hopefully. Because, like RC explained there, we don't want this to be just an entertainment project. We want to try and bring the stories and, like I say, not be over worry people too much, but show them that the reality is getting very different. I mean, actually, as we were going live last week, if you remember, RC, just as we just started to see things coming in just before we went live about that armed Black Lives Matter march. Do you remember that? I mean, that was last week,
right?
Yeah. And that felt like,
and it's
that
almost
feels like,
buried at this point.
yeah, it's gone. I mean, that's just showing you the speed of things, right?
Right.
I mean,
yeah, in fact, almost everything that's led to where we are today. I don't to map it out, I'd be willing to bet that people have already forgotten most of it. I mean, even going back to George Floyd itself. I mean, you don't hardly hear anybody talking about it anymore, and that was just over what, a month and a half ago.
Yeah. Oh, this is what we're trying to say. The rap, and obviously at Members Council, we like to produce small videos too, to try and highlight certain points and that. And like I said last week a little bit, it's becoming almost impossible because, like I say, there would be a big event last week of that Black Lives Matter march. Yet, but if I started writing something on it, nobody wants to know about it now because we've had so much happen in 1 week. And there are consequences to what is happening. And some people are missing this. It's easy to just go look at the mad world, but there are real, there are some really worrying things. Now, I've got up on the screen there a story where a lady, well, the both people have actually been charged for hate crime, but a lady went out and decided to paint over one of these Black Lives Matters murals that seem to be popping up all over the country right now, all over America at least. I don't believe we have any here yet. Oh, sorry, but I'm sure they will be picking up soon. I'm sure somebody would take some incentive. But RC made a really great point about these in a Twitter post that he made, where he talks about these are being charged for hate crime. Now, I know what hate crime means in the UK, and I think it means something similar, but I'll let RC just explain exactly, because he'll be able to explain American law better than us. Better than me, sorry. So, RC, just explain what changing it from just painting over a sign to a hate crime actually does.
Yeah, in America, the application of a hate crime charge is considered an enhancer. So it will take your misdemeanor charge and will enhance it to a felony. So it doesn't matter what it is. It could be any charge whatsoever. If they decide that that initial charge was also a hate crime, you will get that initial charge with the hate crime enhancer, and then you will actually be facing felony charges as well as your initial misdemeanor charges. And so this particular story is concerning because they're being given a felony hate crime charge over trying to cover up vandalism. And this is what's really interesting. If you read their charges, they were actually charged with 3 specific things. Violation of civil rights was the first one, which is really interesting because I didn't know that graffitiing a major roadway in a major city is a civil right. That's very interesting to me that this woman and her boyfriend were charged with violation of civil rights. Secondly, here's the irony. They were charged with vandalism for painting over a Black Lives Matter quote unquote mural. All right, the Black Lives Matter mural is itself vandalism. Black Lives Matter was not charged with vandalism, but this woman and her boyfriend were charged with vandalism for covering it up. And then they were charged with possession of tools to commit vandalism and or graffiti. So literally just having paint and a roller was a charge, and was possession of tools to commit vandalism or graffiti. This is incredible irony, but it's also incredibly dangerous because again, they're being hit with a hate crime enhancer for this. This is a hate crime, um, which means they're facing felony charges, which means if they get convicted, not only will they actually do a stint in jail, something hate crime enhancers usually between 9 and 18 months, typically. Uh, After that, when they get out, they're likely to be on probation for a significant amount of time. They're probably going to have to go through some type of state mandated sensitivity training or programs that are going to cost them thousands of dollars, no doubt. But at the end of it, they're going to be convicted felons, which means they're not going to be able to vote. They're not going to be able to own firearms. And in the meantime, while they're doing that jail time, they're going to lose their job. And if they're losing their job, they're going to most likely lose their home, whether it's an apartment or a condo or a house, because they're not going to be making payments on their home from jail if they're not bringing in a paycheck every week. So they're basically going to lose everything, all because they decided to make a completely non-violent act of covering up paint on the street. The
And
paint
it,
was already there. It had no right to be there. And all they did was cover it up with their own paint. One act was equally as nonviolent as the other, but only one side is being charged as dangerous felons for having done this.
well, I mean,
Go ahead,
people
Phil.
see the term Black Lives Matter as a protest statement. Well, you could easily see that these two people here, these brave people as well, they decided to not just sit on their butts.
It was a counter protest.
A counter protest, yeah. It was a protest.
And
They
so
would,
this is
yeah. Carry on.
I'm sorry.
No, you carry on, mate.
Well, I was going to say this is the concerning part that I was alluding to earlier. This is a clear sign that we're being like a message. We're being sent a very clear message from the powers that be that they are going to incarcerate you for being nonviolent, for committing an act of nonviolent defiance. So this is essentially, if BLM is a protest, these people painting over the BLM graffiti is a counter protest. That's all it is. Neither act violent, but only one's facing felony charges. And we know why they're facing felony charges, and that's because they're white. And that's it. No other reason. And that's the message that law enforcement is trying to send us. Law enforcement is not on our side. They want us too scared to even go out and paint over graffiti. This is a very, very dangerous precedent that's being set.
Yeah, and I mean, these Black Lives Matter signs, as I said earlier, or graffiti, which is what it is, or vandalism, are being state sanctioned at the minute. I've even seen state officials in certain places now, I forget the names now, and I should have had some of those stories up, but actually getting involved in the painting. I don't know if you've seen this, RC, where you've got mayors and etc. etc. Actually,
Yeah, I shared one yesterday of Mayor De Blasio in New York. He was participating in it.
Yeah.
And ironically enough, he didn't have his COVID mask on.
His
He made sure
COVID
to
mask.
take that off
with
while he was
point.
shoulder to shoulder with everybody.
Well, you made a good point in the little thing you said at the beginning while you was explaining why you were going to do this weekly show about the new normal. People were thinking it was just about the COVID-19, but we're getting a new normal across the board, like you say. With the laws are changing, and now I know this is something you wanted to address too tonight, and that is the Karen Act, right? Now, I know you've studied this in a bit of detail, so I'll let you give a little explanation. I'll get something up on that on the screen in a second. But when I first saw this, it absolutely infuriated me. And this is the problem with what we're dealing with at the moment. It's laughable on one end because it seems so absurd, and it is so absurd. In any normal world and normal thinking people get in charge of a felony for painting, counter protesting a protest non-violently is insane, and it's laughable. But at the same time, it is deadly serious what is going on. So, and the Karen law is a great example of just how stupid on the one hand it is, but how deadly serious it could be on the other side. And I know, like I say, RC, you've had a good look at that act, right?
Well, yeah, not in all of its detail, but yeah, in its broader structure. I spent all day yesterday reading over it.
Well, did you find anything in there that was particularly heinous? Because I mean, I could talk a little bit about the the
Well, no,
overall, but
I've got a few notes that I definitely wanted to cover about it. I mean, first off, when you hear the Karen Act, I mean, it should tell you it's a very blatantly anti-white. I mean, they went out of their way to call this the Karen Act.
yes.
Now, at first, I just thought, they were just rubbing it in our face by using that. And I thought they were actually going to pretend that they didn't know that Karen is an anti-white slur that's been applied only to white women. Only white women uh, qualifies being called Karen. So it's a blatantly anti-white term, and it's basically just a white woman who's trying to protect herself from non-white criminals. And so when I actually read a CNN article about it, they were actually much more honest. It actually quoted in the CNN article, they said that it is a spin or a twist. They used the word
Yeah.
twist. They said is an twist on the social media term Karen.
It says it in that
Now this,
article there as well. Yeah. Carry on, sorry.
yeah, no, that's fine. So they're not even trying to hide it. I mean,
No.
there is no other law that exists that is blatantly that you could read it and say, "Oh, that's an anti-black slur," and
No.
that this is an act being put into, into law that's going to result in action against the population. There's none. But this one, they're literally calling it Karen Act, and Karen is one of the most hateful slurs I've seen come out of social media recently in recent years.
hmm
So this is terrifying because it should be telling you that the powers that be, the power structure is telling you that they're targeting you specifically because you're white. And the scariest thing about the Karen Act is exactly what you said. Was it yesterday or the day before, Phil? Is that it's meant to scare women into not reporting violent crimes if they're being committed by non-whites.
Yeah.
And so it leaves white women particularly vulnerable to things like robbery, rape, abduction,
Oh, yeah.
normal things that they would call the police for. Now they're going to second guess it because this act says that if you call on a non-white and the police decide that the non-white wasn't actually doing something, the police aren't just going to, dismiss it and say, "Oh, well, you were wrong, and we're going away now." Now the woman actually can be charged. She can be charged with committing a crime, which we also know, as we just looked at from the Martinez, California case, we know, will be charged as a hate crime. Which means if they make a phone
Yep.
call and they can't determine that Black or Hispanic person was committing a crime, that woman might actually get charged with a felony hate crime charge just for calling the police on somebody who was potentially trying to harm her. So again, it's absurd, and it's almost like hysterical, but at the same time, this is terrifying.
Well, it's a law that is specifically aimed at one racial group. Yeah. You cannot be charged with this if you are black. You cannot be charged with this if you are Hispanic. Now, I don't know the legal ramifications there, but I mean, is that even like, if we were living in a normal, sane world, would that be a legal thing in America that you can specifically target one racial group with a law or an act, in this case, a city ordinance? It's in San Francisco. I mean, and here in the article that I've got up, to re-establish what you said, it comes after the name Karen has become a popular term to describe white women who engage in racist behavior. Now, racist behavior, as we know, could be anything. I mean, literally waving your flag could be considered, waving the American flag could be considered racist behavior in the current climate. Now, and this is also, as RC pointed out, the danger of this is, since I've been young, the police have always said, if you're worried, if you're concerned, you phone us. That's always been the mantra, right, RC, everywhere. If you're worried about something, get on the phone. It doesn't matter what it is. So let's just apply this to terrorism, right? Well, in the terrorism laws, you'll see that every train station here in the UK and airport, if you see something, say something, right? Well, what happens if a white woman walking down sees something suspicious by a brown person but goes, "Hey, man, I'm not going to report that because if they find out that that guy wasn't committing a crime, I'm going to get charged with a crime. So you know what? I'm just going to let him be, and then that person's doing something that does lead to a terrorist act or whatever. The danger here is not just on the individual woman, which is massive, because if there's a young lady standing at a bus stop or waiting outside a club and she feels threatened, there's a group of non-whites around her somewhere, and she feels like they're threatened, she might go, you know what, I'm not going to call the police. If I call the police, I could get in trouble and I could lose my job, especially in this current climate. As soon as you are labelled a racist in this current climate, your life is pretty much over. As for work, etc., etc. So they might go, you know what, I'm not risking it. And then they take a walk around the corner and then they get abducted. I mean, there's so many levels here where this is wrong. It's almost, this is what I was trying to say about it. It's almost, you can't believe it. Like you said, they've actually called it Karen deliberately. I mean, because look at it. It actually stands for Caution Against Racially Exploitative Non-Emergencies Act. I mean, that doesn't even mean anything. They've deliberately.
They had to jump through some serious hoops just to try to manufacture that title. And if they could have put a K at the beginning of it, they would have.
Yeah.
They had to use the C because there was no word that starts with a K that could have applied to the title of this act.
Yeah, the anacronym.
So again, they were trying their hardest to make sure that they were linking the Karen Act with Karen, the racial slur against white women.
Yeah, I mean, and some people saying out there they need to stop. Maybe everybody needs to stop going to clubs. The world's becoming dangerous. But the point is,
I want to address that for a second. Yeah. It's not just in clubs that things are happening, though. All over the Midwest, we actually had it almost had its own classification. We have a lot of bike trails, very short bike trails that are typically between like 1 and 5 miles. Very, very common for people to go jogging on them, specifically women. I know that anytime I go for a walk on them, the majority of joggers I see on them are women. And there was a number all throughout the Midwest. Again, it was like epidemic for a couple of years, and I haven't heard anything about it since. But there were rape after rape on these jogging trails,
and murders,
all by
I believe,
young black men against white women.
Yeah, I saw some stories about that a few years ago, actually, myself. Yeah, there was some murders as well.
Robberies, rapes, and murders. So it's not just about staying out late in the wrong neighborhood, which you're absolutely right. At this point, white people need to stop.
Yeah.
Just stop. We can't run those risks anymore. The days of us enjoying the nighttime, it's over. We don't have any control over this. So we do need to just not put ourselves in those dangerous situations. But by no means should we stop going out jogging and exercising and trying to stay healthy and outdoors and stuff.
No, and something else, this just puts a point. I'm not attacking anybody here with anything, but something that frustrates me, I see it more on Twitter, is if you could put up a story, say a woman gets herself into a bad situation, or a man does something, I saw it with a tweet you linked today where there's 2 guys being attacked and stabbed on an underground. It looks like it was what you call the subway. And people, they need to learn to defend themselves, and it's like, and it's something that we as ethnic Europeans do a lot, and we need to stop. Is when we see a violent crime being committed against a fellow ethnic European, it's like we want to blame the European because he or she did something wrong, and whilst we can look at that in reflection, we should never ignore the fact that. In the instance with that subway, for example, these were just 2 guys going home from work, probably, or going to work. I don't know when it was, and they're violently, viciously, and potentially deadly attack on them. Now, yeah, they should have maybe worked out more at the gym. They should have done a bit, but that shouldn't be your first thought when you see a video like that. Do you get what I'm saying, RC? We need to go, hold on. There are violent people attacking white people for probably no other reason than they're white, given that the media is inciting this hatred against us. I don't know if you want to say anything there, I'll see you.
Yeah, that we could actually do an entire video on that, and we probably should consider doing that, because that's actually become a meme in our community, that the people's first response is, well, you reap what you sow, and somehow it's the victim's fault.
Yeah.
It'd be one thing if we've been exposed to these types of violent conditions for the last, generation or 2 generations, 30 or 60 years or something like that. But this recent uptick in violence against white people is it happened so suddenly. Most people, it's still not in most people's
Yeah.
consciousness yet. So we can't just blame, two guys who are sitting on the subway trying to get home and some guy randomly stabs them. We can't blame the two white people for that. Because again, those guys were well beyond middle age. I would say
Yeah.
probably the one looked like he was closer to early 50s.
Yeah.
He spent his whole life being told that non-whites aren't violent. And he probably grew up never having seen violence committed by non-whites.
Yeah.
So we can't immediately blame him. Now, if he does it again, for instance, if he lets his guard down again the next time, then maybe. But again, it's not helpful to just blame the victim,
No.
especially in this case, because it's not like the guy was out at a black club, dancing, getting drunk, and doing drugs in the middle of the night. The guy was sitting quietly on a train. That's it. So we have to. Yeah, again, I don't know how this became such a meme, but it's like a knee jerk reaction. There's like this little group that just patrols posts and just waits to be like, haha, burn the coal, pay the toll. Like it's, your fault, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's just a really bad meme that needs to die. Cause again,
Yeah.
it's not helpful.
You
And
would
right
not
now,
see it in other
everything-
groups either. No other group
sorry,
would
go
do
on.
this. No other group would do this. And we are
Absolutely
we are a racial group that now needs to stick together. If any transgression is committed by a black person, whether as we've seen with police actually arresting them for committing crimes, so even when the black person is in the complete wrong, they will get out and riot and rally in their name. Now, I'm not saying we suggest we do that for criminals, but someone didn't work out or something, or walk down the wrong street. I don't think it's almost an excuse so you don't have to do anything. Well, it's their fault, right? They were stupid. Well,
that's what I was gonna say. One thing that I've been trying to tell people for at least the last 3 years is, look, with everything you're doing, ask yourself everything you put out there in the social media. Ask yourself, is this helping?
Mhm.
Is this leading towards a solution? Is this going to help white people avoid these types of things or to pull through these types of things? And if it's not, don't fucking say it. It's that simple. You're not helping by saying you get what you reap what you sow, or Nicole, pay the toll. You're not fucking helping. So just don't say it. Even if those are your genuine feelings, that's fine. Don't say it. It's not helpful. We need to show support
yes.
every time we see something like this. Even if it was, let's say, for instance, it was those two white guys' fault. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it was like a train car that was purely full of blacks and they could have chosen a different train car, but their liberalism forced them to stay there. Like, we could say that would be their fault then.
Mhm.
Let's just say they did that. Okay, now they just learned a very valuable lesson. And let's look at it that way. They learned a valuable lesson, but we should still be saying those guys are our people and they were just attacked by somebody who is not our people. Therefore, we should be sympathizing with them, not castigating them, being like, oh, well, that's your problem. Because that could have been any one of your guys' dads or grandfathers or uncles or something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
let's be
completely
real.
the wrong way to look at it.
I mean, yeah, let's be real. I mean, most of us probably got family that do not see things our way yet. They still, to some degree or another, believe the media lies. And you made a good point earlier as well that many of these people, if they live in a reasonable neighborhood and they just watch the TV, they will not know that there is a danger. They really won't know. The TV will not tell them there is a danger. In fact, they're probably be more scared to stand by someone like us because the TV has told them we're the danger, right? And we're the ones that actually care for them, and we're the ones that at least that are looking out for them. And this is a point that I wanted to actually touch on with things like the story we were just talking about, and anybody that falls victim to this Karen Act. And this is about community, because we want to offer some kind of not solutions, because that's the wrong word, but ways that we can help each other in times like this. Now, a lot of these acts are going to start happening in small areas. So you're going to see some local story about some woman that's getting arrested, like the Black Lives Matter protest where they're being arrested. Well, if you see that in your local area, we need to start defending each other. We need to start turning up at courts to these things. We need to start protesting these things outside of courts when they're brought to court. That's something we can do, and something we should do locally. It's almost impossible to do it nationally, especially in a huge country like America. but locally we can, and there's going to be more and more people brought to courts for idiotic things, like because of something like the Karen Act, or because of something like that counter protest with the Black Lives Matter. And I mean, I don't know what your thoughts on that, but it's a way that we can locally use activism without having to do much except say we believe this law and this arrest is unjustified, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime that somebody, like in this particular case with the couple in Martinez, California,
Yes.
being arrested and charged with a felony, again, I can't emphasize the absurdity of that enough. When you see somebody getting, a white person getting arrested and charged with an absurdly severe charge for something that's not even a crime,
Hmm.
yeah, if we can, or organize some type of quick reaction protest outside the jail. I mean, we need to be doing this. And
Yeah.
yes, when they go to court, likewise, because they're going to have news cameras there, media cameras there. We need to show support of our own people,
Yeah.
and while at the same time showing defiance against these absurd, not just absurd laws, but these are criminal. All
Yes,
right,
they are.
these are the acts of illegitimate occupation governments. Like, these are not the acts of a government that is legitimate and cares about the people.
Well, I
I mean,
mean, yeah, we can play boots
go
on
on.
the other foot. Just imagine that there was a law called the Shanika Act that targeted only black women. Yeah? Can you imagine that? And now, you might go, yeah, the media would be behind it. It would. But even if the media was dead silent, do you think that these African American communities would not riot and protest? They'd be all
They
over
would
it. Yeah. Yeah, they would be going mental, right? Now, I'm not saying we copy them. I'm not trying to say we copy them, but we have to
No,
make
not at
our
all.
voices heard however we can. We have to start making our voices heard in defiance, as RC said, because if we're all silent and we go, I'm going to shut my mouth because I'm not the one going to jail for something stupid, well, all we do is we encourage it to happen to us. Because they go, hey, we can just arrest any one of you, and none of you are going to come out and defend each other. So
Well, and
we
not
just,
to mention, that's what I was gonna say, not to mention, it's only a matter of time before they start getting anybody. It could be you next time. I mean,
yeah.
like with the case of the Postmates driver who chased that woman home in, I don't know, what was that, Washington or Colorado? I forget now. But when they chased her home, I mean, she was terrified.
Oh, yeah.
All she did was, flip the guy off, but he happened to be black.
Yeah.
Now he got out and actually said, "Well, she called me the N-word," which she clearly did not, but all she did was flip him off in traffic 'cause, who knows, he might have been driving like a jerk and probably deserved to be flipped off, but now all of a sudden, she's gonna get hit potentially, with a hate crime charge because he made a bogus claim saying, "She called me a racial slur."
Did
Because
you?
again, they're not gonna get in any trouble for falsely accusing us of racism. There's no
No.
crime against that.
No, no, no.
But us, we could be arrested for simply somebody cuts us off in traffic, we shoot him the bird, happens to be a black woman with a big mouth and a big temper. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
You might actually get charged for a hate crime because of that. So the next time something stupid like this happens, it could be you. And you know that if it was you sitting in jail for something that stupid, facing your entire life being ruined, you would like to know that there's a crowd of your own people out there protesting.
Exactly. And we need to, like I say, we've got to do it. I mean, if we let these
Have
laws slide, I mean, what's the next? Okay, what's next after the Karen Act? I mean, how far can they
that's
start taking
that's
this?
there's a concept called logical conclusion
Mhm.
or logical consequence. This isn't just a one-off. This Karen Act, they've been waiting to launch something like this.
Yes.
And this is all part of an incremental, increase in things that they're going to do. This isn't going to stop here with the Karen Act.
No.
You watch, we're gonna start to see all kinds of, acts that are similar and more aggressive than this that gives them rights to basically say, "No, white money is not even good here in this store," or, "You can't even get a certain type of credit card or a bank card or a bank account if you're white." You're gonna start to see these kinds of things. So again, this is only the beginning, and that's why we're doing this now so that we can do things to try and at least defy the rise of these illegitimate laws, because they are illegitimate, they are illegal, and the people proposing these laws are traitors to the government, to the United States of America, to the citizens of this country,
Mhm.
and they should be themselves brought up on charges of treason. They should be arrested for even proposing a law such as this, because we have laws in the books that protect non-whites from laws that specifically target them. Like, for instance, they ended stop and frisk in New York.
They
Now,
did
stop
something
and frisk,
similar in London too,
yeah,
because
there was no like stop and frisk did not apply to non-whites. It applied to anybody, but because the majority of people that were being stopped and frisked during traffic stops were non-white, they said they made a claim that, well, they were specifically targeting non-whites, and guess what? That law no longer exists. But that's not true now for laws that only apply to harming white people.
no, I mean,
So there are no protections for us. And not only are there no legal protections for us, our own law enforcement agencies, they're acting on these laws and they are arresting. Like that woman
yes,
who was arrested for painting, for instance. Sure, the city or the county could have said, "Hey, we're filing these charges," but the police could have said, "You know what? We don't agree with them. We're not going to arrest her for that." But they didn't. They didn't protest for 1 second. They went and got her. So that same law enforcement did not arrest anybody in BLM for vandalizing that same street that she was trying to clean up.
no,
But
they
they
were
didn't
told to
hesitate for
stand
a
down.
second.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they didn't hesitate for a second to go and arrest her and her white husband or white boyfriend.
Well, we just saw as well, just to add to this, the story of the Missouri couple who, as it says there, who defended home, have rifles seized during police search warrant. I believe they've been arrested now. Is that right, RC? I mean,
I was actually going to talk to you about that before we started the show, but then, we got off
yeah,
on our usual tangent. Yeah, I was actually watching a video on that. What's really interesting about that is at this point, I mean, I don't know, things may have changed, but at this point, all they did was they confiscated his AR. They didn't even steal or they didn't confiscate her pistol. Yeah,
okay,
the city of St. Louis, they got a search warrant to enter their home. And yes, they arrested them and they seized his AR. They did not seize her pistol, even though if you were to look at the video, he actually exercised very good gun control. Whereas she was actually very sloppy and actually quite dangerous because she was actually waving her pistol around at people, had her
hmm,
trigger finger on the trigger. He at no point pointed his gun at anyone. He didn't even shoulder the rifle,
yeah.
and he never once let his trigger finger enter the trigger guard. So he was actually being very disciplined. But they seized his AR. Now, again, that's telling you something. And these are the things we need to see. What are the statements that our government is making, our law enforcement is making when they do things like this? Because that's what it is. It's a statement. It's saying, oh, you feel like you're going to use an AR-15 to defend your own home? Even if you're in the right, we're still going to say you're in the wrong.
Hmm.
Because they want us. This is called political terrorism. They want us to be too afraid to defend ourselves, to defend our homes, and to even counter protests, existing protests.
Or phone the
This is
police
terrible.
if you're worried. I mean, all of these things are telling white people they cannot defend themselves. They cannot call the police. Like you say, you cannot protest. You have no voice. Shut up and accept it. Right?
Basically,
And
it seems like
yeah,
the only thing we can do without getting into legal trouble is to let them murder us. Because they're telling us with the Karen Act, well, you shouldn't even call the police on them in the first place.
yeah,
And then they're telling us, like in this case with the Missouri couple, they're telling you, okay, so you don't call the police, but if you defend yourself at the same time, because the police aren't going to defend you, you're going to get in even more trouble for that.
mhm,
So it's like they're punishing us for defending ourselves and doing the job that they should be doing, and they're not going to do. So again, this is a the writing is on the wall, and there's a new sentence being added every single day. And I promise you, there is a conclusion to this chapter, and it does not look good for white people. It is
no,
going to be very ugly, very terrifying. People don't understand that nations come down all the time. I mean,
mhm,
you look around the world, even from the 1980s forward, look at how many nations in South America, in the Middle East, Central America, look at how many have gone through massive political revolutions. And each time they've done that, look at how they restructured it. Look at how many tens of thousands of people were murdered during those revolutions. They think that stuff can't happen here just because we're America. But guess what? It can happen here. It very much can happen here. And we're seeing this happen slowly when you're seeing our own law enforcement turn on us. Again, no one should be charged with a felony for painting over paint that's
mhm,
already in the street. I mean, and
yeah,
then to be charged with having possession of tools, meaning a paint roller. That was their part of their conviction was, oh,
Yeah,
you had a
I know.
paint roller in public.
Yeah, it's
I mean, that's likening that to some type of paraphernalia, like you have drug paraphernalia in your pocket while
yeah,
you're
yeah.
walking home. It's like, well, you're
They
not doing the drug, but you have it. Well, it's
it's
the
all the
same thing. What if you buy
terminology.
your paint in your roller from the hardware store and you're walking home? Technically, if they wanted to be dicks about it, they could say, "Oh, you're in possession of
Yeah.
tools which could be used to commit vandalism and or graffiti."
Well, they like to use words
Again, they're
like
setting
possession.
precedent. I'm
It's
sorry, Phil. Go ahead.
no, it's like they like to use words like possession because it instantly makes you think of a crime. Just like they like to
Exactly.
use the word denier, right? They love that word because as soon as you're a denier, they link it to other things that are historically denied. But and like I say, I just put up there the woman who defended her family. I actually watched a video of her being interviewed, and they've got some good lawyers, it seems now, so they look like they might be okay. But again, by the way, people, it's not being reported in that was the woman that pulled the gun outside of a car. I think I can't pronounce their names. You might have to help me there, Arsen.
Westenberg. It's
Yeah,
Jillian and Eric Westenberg, and that was in Detroit, Michigan.
yeah,
This right here, what you've got up, it reads, so the story is being framed as couple
hmm
charged after video shows white woman pulling gun on black woman.
yeah.
That is the most heinously disingenuous title because if you watch that video, that's not at all what happened. They
Oh
make
no,
it seem like a white woman just rolled up on some black chick and just stuck a gun in her face. That didn't happen.
oh
But
no.
again, like I've been saying for years, the court of public opinion grossly outweighs the court of law.
Oh
And
yeah.
if you are condemned in court of public opinion, it doesn't matter what the laws are, you are doomed. And that's what they're
hmm
trying to do. They're trying to condemn this woman for using a firearm in self-defense, which was very clear case of self-defense. And they're trying to spin it and say, nope, she just stuck a gun in a black woman's face because clearly she's a white woman and she's racist.
And even if they don't go to jail, they've already suffered. In the interview, they explained that the husband that did nothing except get yelled abuse at and threatened with violence, and he's actually a disabled veteran. Um, he's lost his job. He's been made unemployed because of this. They receive death threats daily, and they have 4 children. They're afraid to leave their house, which you would be. Imagine being nationally said that you're a racist. You pulled a gun in this current climate. Imagine the fear that you would have for your family. Yeah.
That spells your total ruin.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're labeled racist on national TV, you're ruined.
Yeah.
Good luck getting a job. Good luck even renting an apartment because most apartments can deny you
hmm
based on your politics now. If
Yeah.
they think that you are in fact racist, they can completely deny you a home. So yeah, once you get that accusation, and that's the other thing, an accusation of racism is as good as a conviction
hmm
because it is so hostile.
And I agree with
It's the worst possible
Helena
thing that could be accused.
in the
I'm sorry,
chat
go on.
there. She says basically becoming unemployed because this is violence against that family. It's actively taking wealth away from them. It's making them. I mean, if you've got 4 children, you need your job, right? I mean, what could happen to their lives? How could they cascade out of control if they lose their house? They become home. Do you get what I'm saying? This is violence, um, just
Yeah,
in a
well,
different
and
way.
think about it in any other context. We'll just use taking a UN type of context. If one nation decides to starve out another nation, that
hmm
is considered an act of aggression, an act
Yes.
of war. And that's exactly what they're doing. When they're making you unemployable, they're literally starving you because if you can't find employment, you are not going to find food.
hmm
That's just the way it is. So we need to see this for what it is. These are acts of aggression against our people.
And again, we need to
Because again,
support these people any way we can. If
yes.
you live locally to these people, if they're worried, I mean, is there a local gun group, gun rights group there? Is there a local anything that can? You know what? We're gonna guard your house. Yeah, we're gonna send a guy around and they're gonna guard your house. Make a statement because that'll get news, right? But why does it get news outside? They'll try and spin it, but good people will see because when they see, They'll go, what's going on? And good people will look it up on YouTube, look it up here, and they'll be able to say, look, they're getting death threats because of what the media did. Because the media framed this, as you say, I mean, look at that title there. They're framing this as a racist white woman, and they're getting death threats. So, and this is how we get our message out. This is how we reach the masses when they see us defending our folk in any way. Yeah, and defending our folk against blatant injustice. Now, there is obviously the fear, like that couple we just mentioned, where that in their letter they apologised. They got down on their hands and knees, but they had to, because if they didn't, their lives were over too, right? So there is the instances where they might deny or not want our help. But we need to try and break these barriers, and we need to try and help our folk, because what we're seeing now is these sacred symbols. Black Lives Matter. You can't destroy any, you can't paint over it. You can't pull it down. I've seen people that were pulling down Black Lives Matter signs off their property, their shops, being accused of being racist, being attacked verbally, filmed, and shame, and in an attempt to shame them and their business, because they were
not even just shame,
yeah,
intimidate them and terrorize them.
Exactly. Yeah, they're better words for sure. But yeah, that's what's happening. These are sacred symbols, and we had another story, another sacred symbol that I want to just get this in before, and I'm sorry I've got this on Twitter here. This is from West Vancouver PD. I don't know if some of you guys saw that, but you'll have to go to the tweet. But the investigators were seeking a driver for defacing a recently installed Pride crosswalk. That's a tyre mark, right? There's a tyre mark on a crosswalk, a crosswalk over a road, and they're considering that a hate crime. Just so you know, and remember, same applies at what RC was saying earlier. A hate crime for driving on the road because you drove over a sacred symbol, right? Just like the Black Lives Matter symbol, we've got the sacred rainbow symbol. So, what did you make of that one, RC?
No, it's the exact same thing. They're sending us a message.
Yeah.
They're making a very clear statement that you can't even leave tire marks on a perceived rainbow flag that's painted on a street that's potentially going to get hundreds or potentially thousands of cars driving over it, because it is, in fact, it is being considered a sacred symbol.
Sacred symbol.
And it almost seems like they would, again, like they would leave it there knowing that this is going to happen. It's like they're looking for reasons to do this to us. But nonetheless, again, the bottom line of it is this is all it takes for them to wrap you up with a hate crime charge and ruin the rest of your life. Get your entire life destroyed for something this simple. This is insane. You will never, ever see a black person rolled up on a hate crime charge for something so small and stupid. In fact, I've never even heard of a black getting charged with a hate crime charge, at least not in terms of like black on white crime. The only ones I have seen is if a black male were to attack a homosexual, typically another black homosexual, they'll charge him with a hate crime for that. But you'll never see them in this particular case go after him for driving over a crosswalk that was painted in the resemblance of a rainbow flag.
Oh yeah, these are sacred symbols now, and this is in the UK there are considered protected classes of people.
Same here, same in the United States, and I'm sure the same in Canada. We have to assume where that story took place.
Yeah, these are protected classes of people. They are protected. In the UK, it's Muslims, obviously LGBT, whatever. I think they add letters to it or something because I can't get it. But these are protected classes of people. It means any infringement on them. Now unlike the Karen law, they can phone the police for anything. I mean, then they do phone the police for anything. There was even like a 999 call here a while ago where people were phoning up because of saying that the shop was like treating people because they were giving them certain food items, etc. Like they were second in the queue, and they were trying to say that it was a hate crime because the person at the shop was white and the person getting the thing was white. But I mean, But they will never get charged. They can ring up about the most absurd thing. Like, what was that? I mean, I don't follow NASCAR and all that, but that noose story a while ago, where there was a pulley for it looked like a pulley to pull down the garage door, what we'd call a garage door, that was like noose shaped. And didn't that, there was a whole media story explosion about that, right, RC? I didn't.
Massive. Yeah.
Did anybody get
Yes.
charged there for going, hey, you got it wrong? You falsely accused that white person?
Well, again, that's another point that we could actually do on the inverse side of all this, is that there is no real crime for
No.
claiming a false hate crime against white people. So claiming that a hate crime was done, there's no crime in lying about that and making that up. At least there doesn't seem to be. They might say it, but I've yet to see anybody actually get arrested for falsifying a hate crime. Or in this particular case, I mean, who knows? Maybe it wasn't falsified. Maybe somebody actually thought that was a noose. I can't imagine that they did, because it looked like a standard door pull. Everybody said it, but in this particular case, like, is anybody going to get in trouble for making a false call on that? No one's going to.
No, if it was with the Karen Act, it would definitely, if the other way around. If she said, well, I thought they were going to do something. The law states that, that would be not only a false claim, that would be racist, because she assumed that non-white was going to commit a crime when they weren't. Well, I mean, we could even take that further. What about the police? Don't they have to handcuff somebody? Is this where it's going to go next? They have to go, hey, we want to take you to the police station to ask you some questions about a possible crime. Are they not allowed to do that anymore if the person's non-white? Do they have to have absolute full bulletproof evidence before they even arrest anybody? Before they ask questions to anybody? I mean, and this is what we were saying about escalation. The more we accept and just ignore this nonsense, I mean, that police department there, that should be, anybody living in that town of Toronto should go and protest the police department. I mean, you want to talk about defund the police. And that actual, just to explain there, that crosswalk was paid for by the police. Okay? Because it's outside the police building. And we've seen this in the UK as well, where they're getting rainbow cars. Right? Rainbow police cars. They got rainbow painted all over. If you want to talk about defund the police, why don't we? They seem to have a lot of money, right, to waste on all of this nonsense, like a sidewalk painted with a rainbow. Why don't we defund their nonsense? And yes, someone's saying by the taxpayer. Of course, always the taxpayer, and the taxpayer is now having their money used against them like never before. I mean, it's never been a good deal paying tax, but I don't think we've ever seen it used so aggressively against, let's face it, the main tax earners, right, RC?
That's something that a lot of people have articulated over the last years, is our tax money coming from white people is being used to fund a war against white people, and we're seeing it. And I would say, again, history, or the course of human civilization, let's put in that context. The course of human civilization operates in cycles. And what we're seeing now is essentially what we would have seen during the medieval period, but instead of a religious fanaticism, we're seeing a political fanaticism, but no less hostile, no less hateful, and no less dangerous. But now what we're seeing is that this political fanaticism is leading into a witch hunt against white people in general.
Oh yeah.
As opposed to, being called a racist is the modern cognate of what would have been being called a witch.
Oh yeah.
During the
definitely.
Inquisition time. There's literally no difference. But instead of being burned at the stake, we're facing something slightly different, which is national and even global ostracization.
Oh yeah.
I mean, because the fact they can put your name and your face in these videos of you up and spread it throughout the whole world in minutes. And then again, destroy your life, make it impossible for you to get a job and even feed your children.
Yeah.
So you're going to lose your children to the same state that just destroyed you.
I mean,
and then only imagine what the state's going to do with your children.
We've talked about doxing a little bit on like an individual level, but when the mainstream media are doxing people essentially And they're not doxing them. They're making false accusations of racists against them, etc., etc. They know that it doesn't matter if they print a retraction story 2 weeks later. That person's life's done. Yeah,
It's already done.
Yeah,
Nobody goes back on and says, "Okay, I'm sorry." Like they don't lose sight of that.
No.
Once the accusation has been made, it doesn't matter if it's been retracted. People just run with it. Again, that's that irrational fanaticism.
Oh yeah.
That hyper emotional extremism that, again, like I said, this new political movement of anti-racism is itself a religion, or
Yes.
as somebody had once pointed out, it might be like an anti-religion. But either way, it has no less of a degree of fanaticism than any medieval religious movement that was,
could
again,
even be
burning
peaking
people
some
alive.
of them. Yeah, I mean,
What's that?
these, it should have been peaking some of them in its mass appeal. There's so many people that are emotionally invested in this anti-racism, which is a code word for anti-white, as the old saying goes.
100%.
And everybody's coming at it. It's not enough. I've seen this a lot in stories. We're going to start wrapping up now, but I've seen this a lot. Even in small stories that have really nothing to do with anything, you'll see people say, it's not enough to just not be a racist. You must be an anti-racist. I'm seeing that more and more, and I'm sure you are, RC. But are there any thoughts you want to wrap up with tonight, mate?
Yep. This is something I'm going to repeat probably every single time I do this show. Is that a wave of danger is coming, but that's not it's nothing to get hysterical about. It's nothing to panic about, but understand you have to do something. You can't do nothing. This is going to become very dangerous for us. Like I was trying to illustrate, this is a wave of religious fanaticism that's coming through politically. And we are the witches. We are the heretics. We are the ones that they are coming for, that they intend to burn at the stake. And I assure you, if there was ever a law that made it okay, they would, in fact, set you on fire while you were alive. Undoubtedly. And in some cases, they've already done it.
Oh, yeah.
So my point is this. You don't have control over the political system. You don't. You're powerless, especially as an individual. And voting isn't going to change anything. You have to be part of a group in order to have power, but don't count on there being a legitimate political movement that's going to give us back power. It's not going to happen. What you do have power and control over is your own neighborhood. You need to get to know your neighbors, and you need to start talking to them about these things rationally, calmly. Don't come across as a lunatic, but understand, like, you need to start meeting these people, because when all is said and done, when these mobs start to come for your neighborhood, you are going to be much better prepared to deal with it if you're dealing with it as a community. If you have people in your community that can actually patrol your community or watch from all four corners of your community. Get to know your neighbors. Start to form groups. I'm not talking like giving it a title and coming up with badges and flags and stuff like that. I'm just talking about getting to know your neighbors and then making sure all of your neighbors have what they need in order to be prepared to defend themselves from any number of possible things that could happen.
And
that's the only real power that you have.
Yeah, make connections. And make connections. You can make it in the right way. Like I say, somebody might be suffering from this that's not really aware of what we're aware of. But they said the wrong thing and now they're getting punished locally. You can stand by them. You can go out and reach out to them and show them that you care. Gratitude is your friend. We talk a lot about how much we love our folk. We have to show it to them. And I mean, I've spoken about this before in various places, but just appreciating what people do for you can go a long, long way with your reputation. And like I say, it's time we start to live up to what we say, right? But with that, I'm going to end it. So thanks again, RC, for joining me tonight, and I look forward to next week's show. It's always great to talk to you. Thanks everybody. Thanks everybody for joining us. I know it's a little bit shorter, but we want to keep these coming out every week, so we don't want to overdo it and make them too stuffy and padded up. So, but anyway, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next week. Be well.